I'm Stan Williams. I'm a senior solution engineer here at Sauce Labs. Today, I'm going to talk to you about visual regression testing, how it is coming up to be more common occurrence in the industry, and how the Sauce Labs visual screener tool supports visual regression testing. At the end of this talk and demo, I'll be available to take questions, and I'm looking forward to that session. Visual regression testing is the practice of comparing what shows up in the UI, the visual state of your web application, with what you expect that state to be. It works across all vendors. Any visual regression product works by your setting of a baseline, that is, running a test that produces visual states, and you say, yep, that's what this page should look like. Yep, that's what this page should look like. That's setting a baseline. Each test that you run after that compares the current state with that baseline that you have set. Now, most comparison tools do this comparison of the two states using a pixel by pixel image comparison. Sauce Visual goes one step further by taking a snapshot of the DOM that produced the visual state for both the baseline and the newest run. What that allows us to do is give you a root cause analysis of any change that occurs. For example, we can tell you whether the change happened because an image is now a different size, or there was a change to the CSS code for that page, and further analysis there as well. What that does is make it possible to find the cause of that regression more quickly and to correct it. That way you have time to spend on the product itself. Less time is necessary for completing the visual regression testing. Sauce Visual integrates with your CI/CD tools, so you're able to see the test status there. One thing that is particularly great about Sauce Visual is the ease of comparing the states in the UI. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we have links to projects. Projects within Screener or Sauce Visual are simply the top taxonomic unit that you use to organize your tests. In this case, I have a project called SauceCon 2021. The details for that project are here on the right side. I had already accepted a baseline, and I am testing 28 different states or views of my web application. As you can see, 26 remain unchanged from the baseline, but 2 have in fact changed. What I'm going to do now is look at all of the states so that we can see what a baseline state looks like and see what the changed states look like. So I'm just clicking on View All States here, and we can see that, first of all, the Screener UI is going to identify the viewport size that the test was run for, the browser, and the operating system. Within that, each of these categories tie to the individual tests run. This kind of organization is within your control. You can choose whatever names you like. This particular test, I'm testing what shows up when we try to log in with a locked out user. I have clicked to bring it up. There were no changes here. The state on the left side, the baseline, is identical to the state on the right, the most current test. Let's go back and look at a change state. The very next one is in the login valid user test, and I inserted some JavaScript to change the website on the fly so we can see some changes. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see what we would expect to see, different product images for Sauce Swag items and their descriptions. You can also see that all of these elements are highlighted in orange. And when I roll over an element on the left side, it's highlighted on the right side. You may also notice that every product image has been replaced with a picture of Joey from Friends, and every product description has been replaced with a brief description of Friends as well. This is going to allow me to show you how we analyze the root cause of these changes. I'm opening up the change panel. We classify changes as layout, content, style, or structure. The first thing we're seeing here is 11 layout changes. These are references to images that are showing in different sizes. That's mainly because the Joey image is bigger. You'll notice that we have the ability to ignore these changes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It's a powerful tool that allows you to use Sauce Visual to run against websites with dynamic content. Maybe you're on the masthead team and there are ads that run below the masthead. Your visual comparisons need to focus on the masthead and ignore the ads beneath it. Sauce Visual has tools to let you do that, both here in the UI, as we'll see, and programmatic tools as well. I'm going to close up the layout changes for a minute and show you that we have several content changes here. When I roll over this content change, it goes ahead and highlights the elements in question. It's calling out, hey, the content of this div, the description of the product, has been changed. If we wanted to allow text to change, for example, again, ads might have text that changes, or the date or a username may show up in your application. Those things are not visual regressions. They're content that you expect to change. I could ignore those changes here. That will ignore this change to this element that I highlighted for every run from now on. What ignoring the change means is that Screener won't say, hey, there's a problem, we have a visual regression. Screener won't say that for this element if the text has changed. If other parts of the element change, its size, for example, Screener will let you know, but we've chosen to ignore a change to the content. As I scroll down here, you can see we have multiple more content changes in this case. And both the image source, replacing the backpack with Joey, and replacing the description with friends, those are both content changes because the image is in fact the content of the div. And beyond that, we go on to identify that it was the source element within the HTML code that caused this change. Sometimes though, in fact, almost always, visual regressions are going to be more subtle than the friends examples I came up with here. In that case, we have an overlay panel that allows you to view the new state as we see here. And using this slider, we can blend in the previous state. Doing that makes it very apparent where a change has occurred. The idea behind having more than one way to identify changes and more than one way to view them on the screen is to fight fatigue. Testers who have worked with visual regression tools before understand that these visual changes can be tiny, and it's always good to have multiple ways to approach debugging this, to approach seeing the changes. I'm going to close out of this example for now. Go back to the index. Again, we are looking at other states of the application that have changed. The only other state here, once again, it's the pictures of Joey. This is being called out as a separate set of changes or a separate state because in this case, it was run on a Mac rather than on Windows. Screener segregates the screens to compare by viewport size, 1920 by 1080 in this case, browser name and version, Chrome 89, and also by the operating system. The result of this differentiation among the different platforms is that you are always comparing apples to apples when you look at the visual state of one and compare it to the visual state of the accepted baseline. So for the purposes of looking at a demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and accept all these changes. What that means is if the next time I run the test, Joey is still there and the description of friends is still there, Screener is not going to call foul. Screener is going to say, yep, that's what we expected to see. These tests, as you can notice, it's been navigating through a demo website that belongs to Sauce Labs. One particular advance in Screener or Sauce Visual is that it is now possible to trigger your visual snapshots from functional UI tests. As you may know, Sauce Labs got its start from one of the founders of Selenium. That browser automation technology, Selenium, allows us to run tests against browser states. The change here is that including the visual regression into your functional tests is just a few simple code changes. I'm going to switch over to a code view. We're going to look briefly at what it takes to turn visual on within your tests and how you trigger a snapshot. A snapshot is one of these panels that points to the app in a particular state. For example, here in complete order, I've named one of the snapshots verify totals. The other one is verify completed order. So I'm going to switch to the code now, and we'll look at those basic settings. Okay, so my example is in Java, but support for Screener Visual is present in all of the languages for which people use for Selenium automation. First thing to point out is we're going to need the API key value. This is just access to the Sauce Visual product at Sauce Labs. Here is where we name the project. I'm going to switch back and forth between this code and how this setting shows in Screener. So as you can see, we have a project name here, SauceCon 2021, Visual Functional End-to-End Testing. We also have a branch and a master setting here. We also have a build tag. When I switch back here, you see the project name is present here. I'm also setting the viewport. It's possible to run more than one viewport at a time and have those states show in one project. Typically, it's best practice to go ahead and separate your projects by viewport size. Here I'm setting the branch, the base branch, and I'm saying, let's go ahead and turn Sauce Visual on. After that, all that's necessary is to trigger the snapshots themselves from within your code. So I'm switching over to this class. This is the one that was capturing the state where we saw Joey. In this line of code, I'm saying, yep, we're going to initialize snapshots on this test, store those tests under login valid user on Screener. So that login valid user ties to this division within the UI. Next, as you can see, we're moving through typical Selenium steps to automate the task, adding items to the shopping cart. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. As you can see, here's some JavaScript that is in fact changing to the friends things. And then here, this is only the third line of visual code in the test. First one initted it, next one gave it a name, login valid user. And this is where I'm actually triggering the snapshot of the DOM and of the image and calling it verify successful login. That is tied to here where it says verify successful login. As you can see, it's simple to trigger the states you want to test and have those run on Sauce Visual. Sauce Visual is using the Sauce Labs infrastructure, so your tests can run against multiple browsers, multiple browser versions, and multiple operating systems all at the same time. You set up that parallel execution the exact same way you would for a regular Selenium automation test. So most organizations start by adding the visual snapshot capability to existing Selenium tests. That's what I did here, in fact. I've switched over to the test called complete order because I want to highlight an ability of visual regression testing to take the place of some assertions that happen in Selenium. As you know, an assertion in Selenium is a true-false value that reflects whether your web page did what you wanted it to do. In this example page, we are going through multiple steps. We are adding items to the cart. We are going to the checkout page here. Now we start to make assertions. This code is making multiple assertions. On this line, it's saying, hey, are we on the checkout page? Down here, it's like, okay, let's continue. Let's verify that we're on the proper page. And then this block of code here is verifying that the order total is what is expected, the subtotal is what is expected, and that the tax has also been properly calculated. So you can see we have a corresponding snapshot called verify totals. That's happening after all of these other verifications here. These multiple steps in Selenium to assert the value and test your checkout page, those can be replaced with one snapshot. I could delete all of this code here and still have the same functional result from comparing this snapshot to the previous one. Let me show you what I mean. Here we are, and we're looking for the complete order. Yeah. So this is, let me go ahead and switch here. Yeah. This is the snapshot of the completed order page. As you can see, we have the price names, the entire image of the page. By the way, Sauce Visual scrolls and captures an image of the entire page, even if it's not present within the viewport that you set. In this case, you can see we have the item total, the tax, and the total. So all of the independent steps to verify those could be replaced with this one snapshot. I think that best practice for visual regression testing is to use it as a tool to, of course, one, verify that unexpected changes to your UI don't give your users a bad experience. You want to mitigate that risk across all of the platforms and browsers that your users are coming from. But on top of that, you can use it to supplement your functional testing and to shortcut some of the more complex tasks in Selenium, like doing verification on all of these separate items on this order page with just the one snapshot. I'm going to close this out here. I want to mention quickly that the docs for Sauce Visual or for Screener are extensive, and there is particularly great support for source control concepts, branching and merging branches to the trunk. If you had two teams check out a branch of the UI and one of them updated how all the buttons look, the other one was updating something else, when the something else team merged their code back in, Sauce Visual is going to automatically update the merges so that that process is not complicated. There are multiple other features within Screener focused on surfacing these issues. We have been looking at the dashboard to understand what may have changed from test run to test run. It's possible for this Screener status, pass or fail, to be made published in your CI/CD environment. In the automated organizations running a high number of visual regression tests, nobody wants to look at the UI until Screener has said, hey, we've got something to look at. So those integrations with the outside world have been made easy to do. I hope that this has been a useful presentation about Sauce Visual, formerly known as Screener, and I'm looking forward to taking your questions. Thank you.